Phil Steele has released his college football magazine to preview this upcoming 2026 college football season, and he ranked Ohio State's defensive line number 1 in the country. That's something that got a lot of Ohio State fans excited, and for good reason too. Steele is very high on Kenyatta Jackson's experience and those 2 Alabama transfers, Quay Rousseau and James Smith, as am I as well. But the 2 players who could actually make that ranking hold up all season long and not be something that people question are ones that hardly anyone's talking about just yet. That might sound backward, but stick with me, because what the team did in the spring combined with what I'm being told about what is going on in the weight room tells a story that in Columbus, the young guns might end up being just as dangerous as the reliable veterans. And for those who say, like, I get this sometimes, we'll get back to the stuff in here in just a second, just entertain me for a second. For those who say, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, he doesn't know what's going on in the weight room and things like that, I get it. I'm new to the Ohio State beat. You're questioning how much I know. I'd be doing the same thing if I were you, if I was a fan who was doing this stuff. I mean, I am, a fan at heart, but you get what I'm saying. I don't normally like to do this where I give receipts and stuff like that, but I have been covering Ohio State for some time now. I covered Ohio State for the OHIO podcast and the Voice of College Football Ohio State channel back in 2023, 2024. I wrote for Scarlet and Game in the 2024 season as well. Some of you know me, so you're not surprised by this stuff. But I do want to reference that in 2024, I was the first to report that Zion Grady committed to Ohio State. I put that out there on the OHIO podcast back after he visited with Malik Autry. I also was the first one to report that Brian Hartline's role with Ohio State was changing in the playoffs last year. Not that he took the job at USF or anything like South Florida, not that he took the job, but that his role in calling plays and as the offensive coordinator would change. I didn't know what it was going to change to yet, but I knew it was going to change. So I get it. Be skeptical, but just know, I do have a track record of, giving you good, reliable information here, which leads us to this episode of the Buckeye Huddle podcast with a new episode every Sunday through Thursday at 7 p.m. In this episode, I'm going to show you exactly why Zion Grady and Sitanilei are the X factors that turn a great defensive line even better in 2026, how their development path under Larry Johnson makes Phil Steele's ranking make sense, and what happens to our 2026 ceiling if these 2 second-year edge rushers hit even part of their potential. If we keep sleeping on the young talent in this room, we're going to be surprised when the rotation carries us all the way through November and December. So don't be sleeping. Be aware of what's going on. Phil Steele says Ohio State's defensive line is the best in the country in 2026. And a couple of key reasons are because of the Buckeyes landed 2 guys from Alabama and have Kenyatta Jackson back for a 5th year. But don't ignore the 2 second-year edge rushers who are going to be huge in deciding whether this room stays elite or becomes a good but not great type of group. Zion Grady and Sitanilei aren't just depth. They're the reason Larry Johnson can run a true 4-man, maybe even 5-man rotation without the production dropping off. Zion Grady is the cornerstone of Ohio State's ability to sustain a full 4-man rotation because he arrived as the Buckeyes' highest rated 2025 defensive line prospect. His high school resume includes being the Alabama lineman of the year in high school as just a sophomore. As a true freshman at Ohio State, he logged over 100 defensive snaps. I believe it was 108 to be exact. He had 13 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and 1 sack, while showing that he can follow scheme, discipline, and edge setting fundamentals over trying to make the highlight reel plays and have the highlight reel production. Grady's explosive first step and his 34-inch, longer than 34-inch arm length gave him the length and burst to hold the edge against the run while threatening tackles and others on the outside with speed and power, or even his inside moves as well. Traits that let coaches mix him situationally without dropping off, which obviously we talked about it on here before, the Ohio State coaches love. That staff deliberately limited aggressive portal shopping for defensive ends precisely because they believe in the development of Grady. Plus, the roster continuity gives him the system familiarity and coaching trust that transfers often lack back when competing for snaps opposite of a guy like Kenyatta Jackson. You see, Grady's frame also allows him to add functional strength in the offseason while retaining his explosiveness and balance. Larry Johnson demands turning him into a reliable rotational piece who keeps the entire edge group fresher, deeper into games and in the season. The other piece is Sitanilei, who supplies the, complementary wild card depth that makes a true four-man, or like I said, maybe even a fifth-man edge rotation sustainable. Ohio State flipped him after they lost to Tahir Mathis and London Merritt as they decommitted, which freed up spots. And Larry Johnson, his first call, he knew who he was calling right away, immediately was Sitanilei, and he sold him on walking in and becoming special. Sitanilei's pass rush toolkit is a lot better than people realize. He has elite bend, natural hand usage, and advanced counters to be able to use even against some of the most experienced offensive linemen in college football. Larry Johnson said he is among the most advanced he has seen from my high school prospects. Sitanilei also sets the edge with his freakish athleticism and plays, quote, on the ball at a high level, giving him more versatility to rotate power versus speed rushers or run stuffers versus being that pure pass rush specialist, depending on down and distance. After enrolling in June of last year and redshirting with just 25 snaps last year, he spent the offseason adding sustainable lean bulk, addressing prior size questions and positioning him for durability as an every down snap taker in 2026 while preserving 4 years of eligibility. Not saying he definitely will be an every down guy, but he wants to work himself into having the body to be able to do that. He also knows CJ Stroud, and Stroud gave Epi advice for accelerating his cultural adjustment to Ohio State. Sitanilei is the pivotal, kind of fifth beetle, I guess you could put it, in Larry Johnson's 2026 plan to play 5 impactful defensive ends. His presence alongside Grady, Bo Atkinson, Quay Russaw, and Kenyatta Jackson Jr. creates the luxury of fresh legs in different skill sets. Phil Steele didn't hand out that number 1 ranking because he's a homer. He looked at last year's group that already delivered one of the most impressive reload performances in program history after all 2024 starters were drafted into the 2025 NFL draft. The first time that it ever happened at Ohio State. We talked about that, I think, last episode or 2 episodes ago. Despite the massive turnover, Caden Curry has emerged as the unit's statistical leader with 66 tackles, 16.5 tackles for loss, and a team-high 11 sacks while earning first-team All-Big Ten in his first season as a full-time starter. Pretty good. Caden McDonald anchored the interior with 65 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 2 pass breakups, becoming Ohio State's first unanimous All-American defensive tackle since Jim Stillwagon in 1970. You like that deep cut, right? winning Big Ten Defensive Lineman of the Year, finishing as an Outland Trophy finalist and getting selected in the second round of the NFL Draft by the Houston Texans after, again, his first season as a full-time starter too. The schematic foundation was that patented 4-2-5 nickel base, or the classic, I guess you could say, 4-2-5 nickel base under first-year defensive coordinator Matt Patricia and Larry Johnson, emphasizing a disruptive 4-man front that generated consistent pressure and run-stopping dominance. Curry and Kenyatta Jackson Jr. combined for 27.5 tackles for loss, 17.5 sacks in their first season as full-time starters, which was far more impressive than I think some fans gave them credit for with it. I mean, in week 5, Curry alone posted a career best 11 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks against Washington, sweeping the Walter Camp, Chuck, I always pronounce this wrong, Benerick, I believe is how you pronounce it. No, it's not right, but you know what I'm saying. The Co-Bronco Narowski National Player of the Week honors, while McDonald also earned recognition as well. The unit helped Ohio State hold every regular season opponent to 16 points or fewer, the first team to do so since the 1975 Florida Gators. While the Buckeyes never trailed in the second half during the regular season, Johnson's development pipeline continued its remarkable run, producing his ninth first team All-American at Ohio State and his 22nd Buckeye drafted in just 12 seasons, turning what looked like a potential depth crisis into one of the most dominant defensive lines in the country. Most programs that lose 3 defensive line starters, the way Ohio State did from this past year, are starting at a rebuild or having having to deep dive into the portal and go after guys. But not Ohio State. The Buckeyes have done it more often than people think because Johnson's system is built to develop guys like Grady and Sitanilei, while the veterans and only a couple of transfers hold down the fort. Of course, the transfers help. That definitely is good for the Buckeyes, but they are still able to stack talent in the 2 deep more than what people realize, even though we don't have Nick Saban in Alabama doing it anymore. This isn't just about 2026. It's about having a defensive line that can sustain excellence instead of peaking for one season and then absolutely falling off. You see, young edge rushers at Ohio State produce very often. Larry Johnson doesn't just throw young edge rushers into the fire and hope they survive. He runs a deliberate 3-year plan, and both Grady and Sitanilei are sitting right in the sweet spot of that timeline right now. Grady's already had his year 1 reps in big games. He redshirted. He changed his body this offseason. He gained steam heading into his second August camp. Sitanilei spent year 1 getting his body right, learning the system. I said he redshirted. That was let me start this part over. All right, so what I meant to say was young edge rushers at Ohio State produce often. Larry Johnson doesn't just throw young edge rushers into the fire and hope they survive. He runs a deliberate 3-year plan, and both Grady and Sitanilei are sitting right in the sweet spot of that timeline right now. Grady's already had his year 1 reps in big games. This offseason, he's gained steam heading into his second August camp. Sitanilei spent year 1 getting his body right and learning the system. Now, he's added the weight and is starting to look the part as well. Johnson's rotations work because he had multiple bodies who can play at a high level, not because he had 2 superstars playing 80 snaps plus a game or anything like that. If those 2 are both contributing even 20 to 35 snaps by mid-season, I mean, Grady could be doing more than that, but that's the baseline, 20 to 35 snaps by mid-season. The entire edge group stays fresh. 20 to 35 snaps a game, sorry. The entire edge group stays fresh. Jackson doesn't get worn down, and we have to, and we have matchup options we didn't have last year. That's the real reason the defensive line can be the best in the country instead of just talented on paper. Zion Grady actually pairs really nicely on the D-line with Kenyatta Jackson because he gives the D-line a different burst and play style. He's already shown he can win in pass rush situations when he gets clean looks. The question isn't whether he's talented, it's whether he can handle the mental and physical jump from 108 snaps in a season to maybe, 50 to 60 snaps in a game if he gets that high. We'll see. I mean, that's pretty ambitious to hope he gets that high, but we'll see. If he does, he becomes the perfect change of pace guy who keeps the opposition tackles off balance late in games. Sitanilei is the higher variance player right now. The weight gain is real, but he can maintain his athleticism, get his technique to match his new size as well. That's the make or break question for him in year 2. From everything I've heard, sounds like he can, but we'll have to actually see it on the field against other competition. If he does, we suddenly have a 270-pound edge presence who can set the edge against the run and still threaten the quarterback. But when you zoom out, this is how Ohio State stays elite in the trenches, while other programs cycle through boom or bust cycles. They aren't just reloading with portal talent who maybe don't know the scheme and maybe the coaches don't know super well. They're developing their own. That's the difference between a good defensive line in 2026 and one that carries us deep into the playoffs and winning another national championship, because the young guys are ready to step up when the veterans need a breather. If Grady and Sitanilei can be real players in the defense can rely on them in September, mid-season, and beyond, obviously, then Phil Steele's number 1 ranking stops looking like optimistic and stuff like that and starts looking very accurate. The trenches will become a problem for everybody on our schedule, not just a strength we hope holds up. After everything we've seen this offseason, it's time to start sleeping. It's time to stop sleeping. After everything we've seen this offseason, it's time to stop sleeping on the second-year edge rushers. If Grady and Sitanilei don't carve out meaningful roles by midseason, this defensive line is going to be good, but struggle to hold up the number one ranking Phil Steele gave them, especially when Jackson needs rest and the transfer might still be adjusting to Ohio State's scheme or the Big Ten. Now, I'm not, being doom or gloom here or anything like that. That's just the reality of how Larry Johnson's room actually works. The young guys aren't luxury depth anymore. They're the difference between a defensive line that peaks in September and one that's still dominant in December. You see, Phil Steele didn't rank the defensive line number one just because of the veterans and the flashy transfers. He ranked them number one because of the whole room, including second-year edge rushers developing right on schedule. This gives the Buckeyes a legitimate shot at having the best and the deepest front in college football on the defensive side of the ball. Zion Grady, if he brings proven flashes and momentum, if he's able to do that, he's going to be a huge piece of it. Sitanilei, if he brings his physical transformation and the classic Larry Johnson timeline to it, he's going to be a huge part of it as well. Together, they give this defense the depth in the future that most programs in college football would absolutely kill for. If we're being honest, together they would do so much. Drop your take in the comments. Are you buying the hype on Grady and Sitanilei making an impact this year, or do you want to see more out of the fall camp first? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you want clear, honest Buckeye analysis without the national media spin, subscribe and join Buckeye Huddle. We're dropping more roster and scheme content all summer long with a ton of great content on the way and more staff additions to be made for the site. So come on over to BuckeyeHuddle.com. Check us out there. Thanks for watching. I'll have another episode out for you tomorrow at 7 p.m. Go Bucks.